cancel your credit cards right now.
I agree.
Thing.
You are listening to the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Matt Helgeson, and I am joined by Phil Kohler.
Hey, Matt.
And Matt Miller.
Hi there.
First off, I wanted to explain something to our listeners. I know that I published a news story saying that we were going to do a reader mailbag segment, special edition podcast that was going to be all reader mailbag this week. I posted that story in the morning, and then about 3 hours later, Sony admitted that their PSN servers had been hacked and that people's credit card information might have been stolen, which turned out to be quite a big story in the world of video games.
It's kind of big.
So we felt it would be weird and inappropriate if we didn't obviously discuss what is probably going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, news story in the industry side this year, maybe outside of Nintendo's new console. So to that end, basically what we're doing is we're going to do this first segment with these guys about the PSN hacking kind of scandal, and we're going to do a second segment which will be a sort of shortened reader mailbag segment that I just kind of called some of the questions that I could get together. And then next week we'll actually do a part 2 of reader mailbag to answer more people's questions, to kind of give you that full reader mailbag episode that you wanted, albeit in 2 parts. And actually, next week's might even be a little longer, so you might get more questions total. But we definitely felt that this Sony story was worth talking about and important to talk about because it has a lot of implications both for Sony, PlayStation Network, the PlayStation 3, and just the industry as a whole. And I think people's security and privacy online. Phil and Miller have both been, everyone's been following the story here pretty closely. I think this all started approximately last Tuesday, or the Tuesday before the ones that just passed would have been when Portal and Mortal Kombat came out.
Yes.
And obviously those are 2 huge games that had big online components, and a lot of people on PlayStation Network were hoping to play online. I mean,
also a lot of people forget this, and I'm sure probably not going to sell quite as much as Portal or Mortal Kombat, but also new SOCOM, which that's
totally
primarily online. I mean, it has a single player campaign now, but still, that is a very much online focused game. Also released last week, and for the people out there who are fans of the SOCOM franchise, they can't even really play the part of that game that they want to be playing.
Yeah.
Well, and in the world that I'm often kind of covering of stuff like downloadable games and DLC, that's a whole nother thing. If you think about one of these little companies or big companies for that matter that is trying to release content on PlayStation Network during this window of time, that's just not happening.
Yes. So,
for instance, a really great game, we just put up a review yesterday, I think, of Outland, which is a Ubisoft game. Thankfully that's available on Live Arcade as well, but on the PSN side, presumably nobody's getting that game.
Yeah.
Like it's had its release date on PSN and nobody can access it, and that has broad business implications for not just Sony but for other companies as well.
Yeah, certainly with downloadable titles like that, they have kind of a small window and they're really, really relevant. And,
right.
By the time that PSN comes back up, those games might not. Any games that were released during this period of time may have lost whatever smaller number of sales they were trying to get in the first place.
Yeah. And the way this sort of I guess evolved over a series of sort of revelations from Sony that got progressively worse as time went on. It was almost like sort of it's not nearly that serious as the BP oil scandal, but maybe the way that Sony handled it was a little bit like that, where they tried to sort of underplay it. At first, it was basically people were just either trying to get online to play online games, and they couldn't, especially on a week with, like you said, 3 big releases. So Sony said, I think the quote was at the time, that was about 8 days ago or 8 or 9 days ago by now, was, we don't know what's going on. It might be a full day or 2 before we're able to get the service completely back up and running, and at this point, it's still not up. Then later, I
don't think anyone expected that was when people I think started realizing that something crazy was going on. Was just I don't think people expected it to be out even over the full weekend.
Yeah.
But then it gets to like Monday and we're coming back in the office and we're like, wait, PSN's still down? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, and then Sony came back, and they have a great phrase here, which is I always like kind of like, PR jargon.
Yeah.
And they said that they then admitted, I think early in this week, that yes, we took it down ourselves because of a quote unquote external intrusion into our system, and that affected PlayStation Network and the Curiosity, which I've never understood how to pronounce that.
I think it's just Curiosity.
Dude.
Yeah, I just blew your mind.
Now you put it all together.
Yeah.
Huh?
I'm so dumb.
That's like their music video service, something like
Yeah,
that?
it's a music streaming service.
You know how they could have resolved that issue? By spelling it Curiosity.
Yeah.
I feel like this is when
the way it's supposed to be.
I literally
spelled.
just got miles per hour like a month ago. Somebody told me that
just
because
like that.
I had made a joke about how I didn't get the joke behind the band Buck Cherry,
Yeah.
which is Chuck Berry.
Right.
And then somebody's like, "Oh yeah, like miles per hour," and I was like, "What do you mean? From Sonic?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what?" Dude, miles per hour? And I was like, oh my God.
Well, now you know.
I've literally been an idiot for like 20 years.
Now you know. Curiosity.
Curiosity. Great music streaming service. It's down as well. So that was bad. And that was maybe the first warning sign that, the fact that it was still down and they'd taken it down themselves on purpose.
Yeah, and rumors started popping up over the weekend. I know I started seeing them pop up on Twitter and elsewhere that like there were people saying like, oh, Sony's going to have to like, I think it was somebody in the Wall Street Journal or something was saying that Sony is completely rebuilding PSN. And it's just like, what happened that they need to be totally like rebuilding the service?
I mean, that's the weird thing about this entire equation for me is the behind the scenes at Sony. It's hard for me to piece together exactly what was going on there, that not only was it such a big problem, which in this day and age I can kind of understand. I mean,
sure,
but for the grace of God, go every other company at this point that is probably biting their nails that this isn't going to happen to them. I mean, people have been spending the week talking about how Microsoft, this is why I pay for Xbox Live, and this could never happen on Xbox Live. It totally could happen on Xbox Live.
And I mean, the people who, the Sony Defense Force, which has been out, of course, as happens when these events go on, they've been very quick to point out, like, oh, there was this time in like 2007 when Xbox Live was down for like 16 days.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, so like an outage like this can definitely happen from anyone.
Right. But anyway, the weird thing is like, I can understand there being the service being hacked. I get that happens these days, but Sony's communication on this stuff just seems really weird because if they knew it was going to be something where they had to rebuild the whole infrastructure, surely that first day they wouldn't have come out of the gate with like it might be down for a day or two, right?
Yeah.
So you assume at that point they just didn't know the extent of the problem.
Yeah.
But then later...
Yeah, the big thing was, I think, about a week prior, or a week after the original outage that had continued, then, which I guess was Tuesday when I put this news story up, the dam broke and they said, well, it looks like people got in. They've maybe stolen information that might include, your login, your password. Most importantly, your credit card information is possibly been compromised, your birthday, your location, any private data that you had stored in the PlayStation Network. And that's when people just, obviously, once you bring your credit card information and identity theft into it, things just went nuts on Twitter that day. It was like insane.
Yeah. There was a lot of rage, and justified rage, because that's the kind of thing that you don't expect to happen. And what's weird about it is like Sony has since come out and said like, hey, the credit card information, if it got taken, it was encrypted.
It was encrypted, yeah.
But they still seem sort of hesitant to say that it's safe, or that they still seem unsure, and that's not the kind of thing you want them to be unsure about.
Right.
Well, and the other thing is the pattern is always, throughout this whole maybe 8 or 9 days has been, they say one thing, and then the next time they make a statement, well, I guess it's a little bit worse than we thought.
Yeah.
And then it's a little bit worse than we thought, and now they're saying, okay, they got your credit card, maybe. But we don't think they did. But they might have. But either way, it's encrypted. Probably. But but the way this pattern has evolved, it's always tended to verge towards the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario.
The next statement's going to be, we've actually found out that everyone's credit card numbers are just being handed out to random people in China right now.
Yes.
Just so you know.
I know that one of my friends on Twitter, guy who used to write for me, actually said that he had actually had a $1,500 charge appear on his credit card, and it was something where he was like, I can't really prove that this is anything related to the PSN stuff, but the timing of it is pretty suspicious. So there's been like weird anecdotal things popping up around the net.
The one thing, I don't think that anybody who's really excited about the industry and excited about games can look at this and be like, see it as a good thing. I mean, nobody wants Sony to fail or Microsoft to fail or Nintendo to fail. Like, competition is good for us gamers, right? And so anything like this that happens is actually, as much as we complain about it and everything like that, is ultimately kind of not great for the industry. But
it's terrible.
But the one thing that I think could be good that comes out of this in the long term is a little bit more public awareness of just how far-reaching some of these game-connected online networks really are. I mean, this is the equivalent in a lot of ways of if Verizon came out and said, hey, all your information, all your phone numbers and your credit cards connected to your phone accounts have been compromised. I mean, this is the same level of security breach as that, and that was, I think, kind of on display by the fact a couple days ago there was a U.S. senator that straight up like got involved and started sent a letter through and
was questioning basically why Sony took so long to inform its customers about the credit card
Yeah.
and identity theft part of it,
Right.
which I think is a very valid question.
And Sony's line on that, they've again since come out after their original statement and after they saw that people were questioning why they took so long, they came out and said, hey, listen, we didn't know for sure, and that's why we didn't say anything, but it still seems like they took an awfully long time.
it does seem like a...
This is coming from someone who I don't know the realities of how that structure works in the back end or how they figured this stuff out. So like maybe that's legit, but
I think that Sony's in a really tough spot here. If you kind of put yourself in the shoes of whoever's making decisions about how to communicate about this stuff, you got to think that on one side you don't want to oversell the problem and tell people like everything about PlayStation Network has been compromised. Your credit card numbers are completely out there. They're getting used. You need to cancel them right now, because that's clearly, or at least it seems to be, an overreaction. On the other hand, you don't want to undersell it and come across like, whoa, this was no big deal. There's a little security breach, but we don't think anybody really had any big. There's no big problems are going to come out of it. Mm-hmm. And so to walk that line in between is really rough for whoever is sort of determining the communications on this.
Absolutely, yeah. I have a friend who has a very good contact at Microsoft, and he said that the mood around Microsoft was not gloating. No, it because I think some of the speculations that Sony was sort of put in the crosshairs of maybe whatever constitutes the hacking community by the earlier thing with the root key of the PlayStation 3 and the lawsuit against GeoHot and Anonymous, this hacking ring that had basically found the root key that would sort of allow you to make your own kind of installations of software into a PS3.
Yeah, well, I think where it all stemmed from was like originally when the PS3 came out, they allowed you to install Linux on it, and then they released a patch that made that no longer possible. And there were a lot of hackers and a lot of people in the community who wanted PS3 to be more open, who were upset about that. And so that's where this all originally stems from.
Right. And then the court case where they tried to basically stop this anonymous hacking ring from, kind of.
I don't think that was Anonymous. I think that was just that GeoHot.
Oh, just the one guy. I thought he was the leader of that, though.
No. Anonymous is just this totally separate entity.
Oh, okay. I was confused.
They were threatening to go after Sony because of that, but not because that guy is necessarily, as far as we know, related to them in any way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But they claim that they are not involved in this
That is what they're saying.
Credit card thing, who knows? But
So your guy at Microsoft.
basically, they just, I think they rightly feel that Sony has gotten a lot of bad press within that community, and might have been, people just wanted to show Sony how little power they really had over the situation. And Microsoft, I think behind the scenes, they've been pretty mum on this issue. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they're taking all the efforts to improve security, but if you look at it over time, I mean, is anything really immune to this? If the hacking community and all those thousands of guys that are frankly just as good at security breaching as the multi-billion-dollar companies you hire for security consulting are. I mean, is anyone immune? We've seen WikiLeaks. We've seen any variety of big companies having their websites taken down.
I mean, and I think that's what it comes down to. What Matt was saying earlier is like that kind of outage, that problem where whether they're getting hacked or whether it's some other issue where the system is just down, you're not able to access it for a certain amount of time. That's possible anywhere, and that's going to happen from time to time, and that's relatively understandable. And I mean, like Microsoft in the past, when they've had bad 360 outages or Xbox Live outages, they've handed out a free game, and that's sort of what I expected to happen here. Is I expected PSN to be down for a few days and then for them to hand out a free game, like a free PSN game. But the problem comes in when information starts getting leaked, personal information of any kind, but then especially when the question is like, your credit cards might have been part of that and they were encrypted, but they might have been able to figure out the encryption or whatever. Like at that point, it's like that is where you guys need to take responsibility. Like if you are giving us the ability to put our credit card info on here, if you're making that a core part of your system that we need to put in our personal information to buy stuff, you need to do every step possible to protect that information.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
in a lot of ways, the maybe thing is almost worse.
Yeah,
they just said like, okay, everybody, our bad. You need to cancel your credit cards right now.
I agree, because it's like, well, yeah, it left me thinking like, should I go through the effort of canceling my credit card? Like, obviously, it's better safe than sorry, but like, I don't really know what to. Yeah, it's a huge pain, and I don't know what to think. Like, I don't know if this is a serious threat. I don't know, like, what are the chances that my card has been compromised? Like, they have not given me a good sense of that, so I don't really know.
And there's the other side of it too. I was talking to a friend of mine that's a programmer, and not even in games, but he